Some imaginary friends can be your best friends, and then some imaginary friends might kill you. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore, and I love independent horror films. I don't know, I just personally love them. And I'm excited today to talk to the director of Z, Brandon Christensen. You're also the co-writer of the film, from my understanding. Is that correct?
Yep, that is correct.
Now, whole concept of having an imaginary friend, because the whole story of this kid has an imaginary friend. Is this imaginary friend really imaginary? What's going on? Obviously, things don't go well for some of the characters in your movie, but the whole concept of having an imaginary friend, this is something that I assume you had one when you were a kid, and that's where you drew the inspiration.
Actually, I didn't. I had some other things that I dealt with, but the imaginary friend thing actually came from my wife. After Stillborn, my first film, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, and I had the idea of something like an Omen type film about a kid and a family dealing with a kid. And my wife and I were talking about different ideas, and she threw out the idea of an imaginary friend, and everything kind of just clicked from that moment. We were just like, "Oh, that's interesting," and we just kind of snowballed a bunch of ideas, and yeah, Z was born with that.
And then the one thing about, look, it's no surprise. There's a creature in it. What went into the design of that creature, which I feel like you very smartly, like, we don't get to see it fully, I think, ever. I could be wrong, but I don't really, I don't think we get to see the whole thing. But what went into the design of the creature for the film?
When you're, super independent, low budget film like we were, the hardest part is just when you're doing something that's, you're creating an idea of like what a demon might look like. Cause we don't have any like concept artists or anything like that. We can't pay anybody to be like, hey, give us 25 drawings and, we'll decide in the morning. So it's kind of like everybody in the production team is looking at me and just going, what does Z look like? And you're just like, I have no idea. So you start Googling demons and you start pulling from different things and trying to come up with this idea, but you're also limited on budget for what you can do with like makeup and effects and stuff like that. So you end up just going with the tall, skinny, naked dude, and you just kind of play with that. And one big thing that happened, because we had like a full prosthetic piece on his face with the big smile, but he was manipulated in visual effects a bit to make his eyes a little bigger and his mouth a little tighter and things like that, because Brittany Allen, who also did the score of the film, she did the big charcoal drawing, and she sent it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that drawing. Definitely don't forget to discuss it. I want to talk about
For
that.
sure.
Yeah.
She sent it on like the first or second day of production, just as like a random charcoal thing. And we were just like, oh, this is great. But it's probably too good for an 8-year-old to draw. So we just sort of like held on to it. And then when we were in post-production, like we put it on the wall, because we weren't able to actually write on the wall or anything because it wasn't our house. So that's all VFX. And we kept using the charcoal drawing that she did, and it just never changed. Like, it was like, yeah, I know, we'll change it later. But it kept becoming like an iconic part of the film. So we just ended up keeping it. And then we kind of adjusted Z's look a little bit to match what that drawing looked like. Like it was kind of opposite of how you think you'd do it, where we had makeup and then we changed that to match the drawing because it was just so cool.
Well, it's first of all, I'm shocked to find out that the drawing that's on the wall is actually a VFX. That's digital effects. It's wouldn't have known. And I feel like a lot of people don't really appreciate that a lot of VFX aren't necessarily special effects that stand out. I mean, they're like simple, like sign replacement or removing things like wires and whatnot for animatronics. So I love those kind of invisible things. I did want to ask you about, did you do like a mix of VFX and practical effects?
Yeah, he was mostly practical. It was more like the bathtub scene is the time you really get to see him the most, even though it's really brief. But that kind of went through a ton of different iterations of what it looked like, because we had him sitting in the bathtub and he was just, the actor Luke Moore that played Z, he's able to do a lot of really weird contortion-y type things with his body. So he was doing a lot of really showy things, and ultimately decided to kind of, we step back and be like, well, what is the scene really about? It's about this thing that's seeing his friend, or knows that his friend is seeing it for the first time in 30 years. So he's like a little boy, is excited, and so we went for a more innocent look there, which kind of contradicts or juxtaposes the scene, because it's such a classic horror movie scene where you got the candles, you got the darkness, and then all of a sudden you put this like very bizarre looking thing that's like happy to see her, and it just has this kind of off-putting feel to it, which I really liked. So yeah, but VFX are such a key thing. Like what you said, they're not really special effects; they're just hiding. And there's like 180 something VFX shots in this film, and the only ones that are really showy are the fire scene, because obviously we can't do that. But most of it's just hiding things, adding little things. Like I did a whole VFX reel, because I did the VFX for the film myself, and I'll have to send it over your way after. It's pretty cool. It just sort of shows some of the stuff we did.
Now, I would definitely like to see it, because one of the things I found kind of ironic about the film, I'm sitting here thinking about this movie, which really creeped me out at the end. So thank you for that. But one of the things I found really interesting is the way to really make any VFX or practical effect work is to pretend. You have to pretend it's there. And this movie is about an imaginary friend. So
Totally.
I kind of found it just little a little ironic or strange, and it's just like, oh wow, they're talking about an imaginary friend while they're acting about an imaginary demon,
Right.
so to speak. Talk to me about the performances and how, because I truly believe that some of the best special effects are made better by performances, and then a movie where you go, when a lot of people will just say out loud, they say, well, the visual effects were not very good for this movie. I think what they mean is that the actors were not very good. But I mean, obviously that's not true with your film. I mean, it's the actors are amazing. Tell me about working with them.
They were great. Keegan was kind of the one that was there the entire time. She was there all 20 days, and she was always pretty much, other than the train sequence at the end, she was always there. So it was really fun to just sort of work through a lot of that with her. And she comes from definitely a different background. Like, she did Final Destination 2, a while ago, but she does a lot of TV work and a lot of stuff where she's not necessarily used to being on set all the time and always being there, So I think it was a great challenge for her to live in that character for so long. But she totally knocked it out of the park. Like, we loved her. And the nice thing about the shoot was that the whole third act, where she's living alone with Z, was all saved for the end of the shoot. So it was the last 4 days of the shoot. Which was really nice, because by that point she had really found the character's voice. She had really kind of gotten into the psyche of what it was, what Beth was going through. And so we were able to just sort of throw her through this gauntlet that she was just, totally ready for at that point. But yeah, filming that was so much fun, just because there's some deleted scenes from that sequence too that didn't make it, but we're shooting these scenes with nothing, like she's sitting opposite nothing at a table, but we're still framing up shots of nothing, like you film the chair, you do these things, everyone, quiet on the set. We're getting, guys, it's quiet back there. We're filming, but you're filming just nothing. So it's really funny, because she's still performing off of it. So you have to give this empty void of a space like the respect, so that Keegan can, work opposite of it. But it was so much fun. And just a big thing was just allowing her to just really go to a dark place. And that was kind of the big thing. Like, you look at something like Hereditary, where Toni Collette just goes, so dark that it just makes her performance so much more authentic. So that was a big thing that Keegan and I talked about, was just like, don't be afraid to just be, really gross and nasty, and it's just going to work so much better for the film if you can go to this super dark place. And she crushed it.
Yeah, but it's not over the top. That's why I think it works. It's subtle. The location is also, in a way, kind of I mean, obviously adds to the atmosphere, in a way, kind of its own character. Where did you guys shoot, and how did you lock that location?
The old, like, her grandma's or her mother's house.
Yeah.
We actually shot a scene for Stillborn there. I don't know if you've seen that, but the
Mm-mm.
main character goes to this old woman's house, and it's kind of like the architect scene of the film, where you go and get a bunch of exposition, and then you know what's going on. It's like the midpoint of the film. But it was such a great location that we only used one room in. So we went back to them. We said, hey, I think we had to shoot 9 days there. We've got 9 days. We need to shoot it, at a nice house like this. It's like, basically you walk in and it's shoot ready. You didn't have to do much. There was no set decorating done. We brought the TV in, But other than that, everything was there as is. It's just very like eclectic and so much texture. The wallpapers are all done and everything like that, and it adds so much production value to it without doing anything. You know, you just point a camera in any direction there, and you're getting so many interesting things to look at. So, and it worked really well to be opposite of the Parsons house, their house that burns down, because their house is so sparsely decorated. It's very contemporary and everything. There's no memories or anything like that. Whereas you go to the other house where the mom is, it's like you're walking into a time capsule where all these memories and horrible things from their past are kind of just lurking. And so it really played into the script on that level as well. So, I mean, locations are so important. It's just like, you know, just being able to have those textures and things like that instead of shooting against like a white wall or something like that. So we got really lucky with that house because it's so cinematic.
Well, I'm curious. So I have not seen Stillborn, which obviously I need to see it now, because I feel that to me, the most important thing that a director brings into a project is tone. And on that, you nailed it with Z. But what were the lessons you kind of took from Stillborn into this?
I think one big thing is definitely not getting caught up in the small, like, don't sweat the small stuff. There's so many little things that you can be like, oh, you know, trying to add your own subtext to scenes or something like that. What if we hide this little detail in the background? Things that you ultimately spend more time worrying about than what you should be worrying about, which is the performance of the actors. You know, like they're going to bring so much subtext that you're not even going to notice until you're in the editing room and you're looking at it. And you're like, oh, wow, I didn't even see what they were doing there, because I mean, you're getting professional actors that have done this for years. And so they bring this this point of view to the material that you're not going to really be able to understand by yourself without seeing what they're doing fully. And so it's really interesting just to allow the actors to do their thing, and you can tweak as you need. But you know, it's just like things like inserts and stuff like that on Stillborn, we might have spent more time than we needed to on things that didn't really matter. And then when there's like a big dialogue scene or something like that, you're kind of rushing through because you spent all that time, you know, really focusing on the cinematography on this one insert shot of a phone or something like that. It doesn't really matter. So that was a big thing for sure. Just like just letting the actors kind of do their thing, and stepping back from what your preconceived notions are from the script and just seeing what they're doing, because they offer such a different perspective. I think that was a big thing I took away from it.
And now I have to ask you about that big mural and how that that I mean it's so overpowering in the movie, and sort of a tease of things to come. How did that make its way? You said you were going to change it out, but it's so effective. I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we just, I mean, me personally, because everyone was like, this is great, and I was just, this was another thing where I'm kind of thinking, I'm overthinking things. So I was like, an 8-year-old was supposed to have drawn this. I don't think an 8-year-old could draw with that much fidelity. You know, it's just like very well sketched, and so it didn't really, just from just like a nitpicky perspective, it didn't really make sense. But from a cinema perspective, where you see it and it's big on this wall, it works great. Like, you don't really think about that. Some people have brought it up, but in general, it's just, you sort of take in the sight and it's just kind of crazy. So it's just one of those things that I was overthinking, and eventually you almost like run out of time. It's like, well, we'll replace it later. We'll replace it later. And it just, you never, later comes and it's not been done. So you're just like, okay. And then you sort of embrace what's there, because you know, it is awesome. And it has become like a big piece of the film. Like, there's a guy that tweeted about, he drew it on his own wall in his studio. He drew the chalk with charcoal and everything. Wow. And it's just like, wow, that's amazing. It's like fan art, but in the real world, which was really awesome. So yeah, it was just one of those things. Brittany in Stillborn, she also did some artwork for us in that. So she's super talented. And she was able to it was basically a one and done thing for her. She did one, and it ended up being in the film because she just had the right idea for it, which was crazy.
Well, what I like about it is, you know, he says he drew it. My assumption was he didn't draw it, that the demon had a hand in it in some way, which I think that, like, that's the thing a lot with genre, sci-fi and horror, is you can over explain things and it ruins it. And when you don't explain something, it's better because it allows the audience to use their imagination. So when that all played out, you know, the question that's hanging there, did he do it, is actually a good thing.
Totally. I agree. And I think that's such an important thing that, it's a lesson that I learned from Stillborn and in Z. I learned it again in the new film that I'm working on. It's once again, it's a balancing act of not being over expository and allowing the audience to play catch up a little bit and just sort of letting them figure out things for themselves. Cause, I would rather have someone go, wait, what was that? Rather than being like, okay, I get it, move on, that kind of thing. Cause you don't want to lose them. But if you have them thinking about it, it actually works to your benefit, because you never know if they could even put their own interpretation onto it, which I think Z has a ton of, like with the whole ending. I've seen tons of different interpretations of what's going on. I know what I think happened, but it's interesting to hear what other people think too. So it's just a bummer when you read something and you're like, oh, wow, that's much better than what I thought. So,
well, I love that though. When it's open to interpretation, I think there are no wrong answers. Right. And that's what makes it fun. I just think when you see a horror or sci-fi film where they just kind of over explain, or it's too on the nose, I feel like it's a missed opportunity. So totally. Brandon Christensen, thank you for joining us on the Film Threat podcast. The movie Z is, well, by the time that this is released, it'll be out and available on everything.
Yeah, right now it's just on Shudder. It came out on Mother's Day, so if you have a Shudder subscription or you don't, you can get it. You can get it there. And then on September 1st, it comes out on VOD, and then September 14th, I believe, on Blu-ray.
That's perfect. That's great. Thank you, Brandon Christensen. I also want to thank our sponsor, Storyblocks. Go to storyblocks.com/filmthreat. If you want to be a filmmaker like Brandon, all sorts of tools are there. You might want to consider those tools for your next film. It's a great resource. Storyblocks.com/filmthreat. Actually, what is your next film? Can you tell me anything about it? Is it horror?
It's horror? Yeah.
Okay, good.
It's a little bit different. There's no mothers that I'm terrorizing in this one, which is a big departure. But it's we're going to camera on October 5th, which was supposed to be in May, but the whole pandemic thing got in the way of us. So right now we're just sort of in prep on it. I don't want to say too much yet. It's just a totally different tone. So it'll be fun.
That's cool.
We'll do this again.
I'm really looking for, when the longer this thing drags on, the pandemic, that just people write the pandemic into a script. Like it's just in the movie, people are wearing masks in public and whatnot. Like that's just part of the story, right? Because that's the normal for 2020 at least. Did you
watch Host on Shudder?
Yes, I did see Host.
Yeah, I just watched it last night.
I quite enjoyed it. I don't know. I mean, I haven't spoken to the filmmakers, and it's like 60 minutes. It's like perfect. And they even work in, I thought it was so clever how they worked in. It's one of those, I guess you would put it in the category of a screen movie. Yeah. Because it all takes place on a screen. I thought it was so well done. I don't know how they did some of that stuff.
Right.
But I really enjoyed I just got to get Shudder, because I've talked to so many filmmakers who have movies on Shudder now that it's like, and it's like, oh God, I just got to break down. I just dread signing up for another streaming service.
For sure.
Yeah. But, awesome. Well, Brandon, congratulations. Thank you so much for joining us on the Film Threat podcast. And I want to talk to you when your new movie comes out too.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do it.
Hit me up. Take care. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, man.